Easy E, how are we?
Hey, something I never do.
What's that?
Well, one, I ran. No, I'm just, um,
No.
I, I stayed true to my word. I told you we recorded an episode, and I seen the temperatures for today as we're recording on a Sunday was gonna feel like 40 degrees Celsius, and I had a long run to do. I was like, oh no, this is not gonna go well again, and it's just so frustrating. But I seen the temperatures are going to be their lowest between 4 in the morning and 7 in the morning. And I was like, right, I have to go running at 4 o'clock in the morning.
For context,
Um,
for people listening for the first time, where the hell are you?
I was on top of that. My air conditioning stopped working yesterday. So I went to bed, but like, it was like sleeping in a sauna. I just sweated. It was basically a 4 hour session in the sauna and then went
Jeez.
running. It was just, yeah, it was a rough one. I felt like but I have to say it did make a big, big difference compared to some of the mornings I've been running between 8 and 10 or between 5 and 6. My heart rate was able to stay a hell of a lot lower. To put it in context for me, it's always 2 hours because
Mm.
for me, with this little training, anything more than that, you're going down the road of probably getting an injury and something. And I'm hoping over the next 3 weeks we'll just get there. But it added for the same effort and well, actually less effort. The heart rate much lower than it was on other previous long runs. I ended up getting an extra nearly 2.5 kilometers into 2 hours,
Nice.
which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at perceived effort versus the time, it's like that's that's a significant difference by just getting up a few hours earlier. So it's so bizarre though. I can't like people are saying, "Oh, what time are you hoping for?" I can't put a time on it because I have this limiter here in terms of
Mm.
heat, and it's like I can't go faster than a 6:30 for X amount of time. I can't do intervals more than 4 or 500 meters at this pace because it's just too hard. You just blow up like no other, and it's bizarre. I've spent like 6, 7 months in summer now between the Middle East and now Africa, and I just looking at everyone's strat, and I'm oh, fuckers run that 30. Yeah, it's like this person's doing that. This I'm like, I'm getting that Strava envy. But so it's gonna be bizarre. It's an experiment, but I'm not nervous. It's just so unknown. I'm getting to the start line of what'll be marathon, and I'm like, I have no idea. I've no concept of how this is gonna go.
For context of what you're saying there, like I'm throwing on the jacket and stuff going for long runs at the moment because it gets a small bit warmer. Because I'm going to Spain, to Barcelona for the marathon next month. And you were saying before we hit the record button that you're over there, you're talking to someone that's from Spain. It's like, I can only run an 8 or 9K over there, but then in Mozambique, but then when they get to Spain, they're able to double that to 15, 16 and feel the same. It's the same effort to get double. And if he's going to Spain for somewhere cooler for that, it has me a little bit worried about how hot you're actually training in to drop down to Spain compared to how cool it is around here to back over to Kildare to jump up to whatever it is going to be Barcelona
Yeah.
next month and time that with the gear and all coming and the bags and all you're showing for the Any Given Run Day logo on it. It's like, oh, this is getting real because we've been talking about this, the podcast on and off for the last like 10, 11 months since this was first announced. And it's like, it just seems to be something that was so far into the future. And now they put up in Barcelona on the Instagram page is like 1 month. And now it's like, oh, there's only really a week or two left of training before tapering. Well, tapering for some of us.
Yeah, there'll be no tapering done here. There'll be no taping my mouth shut just to lose a bit of weight, I'd say. But it's amazing. Look, it's amazing when gear arrives. You put so much into like it's so bizarre. You come up with a concept. It's like, let's go do a marathon.
Mm.
Do you reckon people will come with us? Who knows? 43 people sign up. It's like, oh my God. Right, what we get? We'll get bags, we'll get this, we'll get towels, we'll get hats, we'll get t-shirts. Then they start to arrive, and you're like, oh my God, I can't
This is
believe
real.
this was just a conversation. And now it's getting very real. So, yeah, 30 days to go. The stress of that is taking its toll on me training wise. But the trip will actually be the easiest part of it. But yeah, it is exciting. I know everyone is carrying nerves. It's hard to train for a spring marathon. It is hard to train over a winter, particularly. Look, I've had different issues in terms of heat, good, bad, or in people now arriving in March with some foundation of running for the year ahead, which is excellent. And all we have to do now is, for most people, they've done their long runs this weekend. They got the nutrition talks off me. One or two people
Mm.
actually listened and seemed to have a better long run and survived it with a little bit more ease, and they fueled correctly. And so hopefully now people just trust in the training, good, bad, or indifferent, and they get to the start line and give it a go. And hopefully a safe and successful trip for everyone. But it's very exciting now.
Yeah, it's coming up now, and like I talked on the podcast a couple of weeks ago about getting struggling going out that early in the morning, and thankfully this morning a few people are going running 8 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, I'm jumping in to get my 2 hour run, and 2 hours flew by for me. And like I knew, like if Eric gets his run in, he's gonna be absolutely sweating on a treadmill. I'm just chilling on a canal getting this in, so I didn't mind the colder weather this morning. And before we get into today's guest, though, just I have to ask with the nutrition kind of stuff you're talking about this week, and leading a month to a marathon. What kind of questions are coming up that you're like, oh, people are still asking this kind of question, or is there anything that popped up that kind of surprised you? I know you did a fair bit of study and notes on it this week as well, because for full context, you have a nutrition course under your belt. You're qualified in that. Was there anything you're like, oh, people do ask this kind of thing, or in your research, you're like, oh, wasn't too sure about this.
I think for most people, the key takeaway for anyone doing marathons, and what I do, like I'm a nutrition coach, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm
Mm,
here to kind of highlight stuff you can probably find yourself, and I just put it into one place. There are great people out there, some we've had on the podcast as well, with the qualification if you're looking for more specific. And but I think the biggest thing people, or the scary thing people don't really realize, is what carb loading is, and what is involved in that, and also how much you should fuel in a race. We'd people say, "Oh, I take 2 or 3 gels over the course of a marathon." And it's like, ooh, and kind of highlighting to them how much they should actually be taking, when they should be taking it. And and then there's other elements in terms of caffeine, and it's always a double-edged sword, caffeine. If you drink 2 3 coffees a day, don't blink
mm,
when you're taking caffeine gels. If you don't drink tea or coffee, you could have a very different day come 30 kilometers in. So it's very specific, I suppose, nutrition, and it's one thing to do. But I suppose in general, from talking to a few people and a few of the questions that have kind of come out of it, they don't realize how little fuel they have been taking on. They don't realize how little they've been fueling their body, and what a marathon will do in terms of your energy. And I think for that, anyone who is struggling as they get to that 25 to 30K, you probably need to start looking at how you're fueling. It
mm.
is probably the miles, the everything, all that effort. You put in all that effort over all those weeks, and nutrition can either help you or hinder you on the day. And it's as good as picking the good shoes. You're going to spend the money on the shoes. You really need to start thinking of how you fuel. And then more importantly, the best for the group was they actually got to practice it. It's actually a really nice moment. Someone texted into the group saying, I actually listened to what you said, and my run felt so easy, and I did 34K, whereas other runs felt more difficult. And that for me was enough. One
Mm.
person made a change, they trialed it, and that's the most important thing when it comes to the marathons, is test it. You have to test these things in training, because what works for me will not work for Sean, and what works for Sean will not work for me. But you can ballpark give guidance and say, this is what you need to be looking at, this is the quantities you need to be looking at. But most importantly, you need to go and try it out. So yeah, it's been good. It's information that's everywhere, but I suppose how do I word this without, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has one, right? So um
Nice time of the gels talk, by the way.
yeah, and that's why I couldn't get it out of my head. But a lot of people pick up advice from people who have their way of doing things, and then they try their way. And I suppose that was probably one of the key factors, was given the information of what the science says about fueling, and then please try and figure out that for yourself, and what works for you, and timings that work for you. And mostly timings. I think people were, for me, one of the key differences, people tend to go off kilometers. So every 5K, I'm going to have X. Whereas for me, it's a time. Time is absolute in a marathon. Distance, like time happens whether you go fast or whether you go slow. So trying to get people to transition to, okay, after X amount of minutes, I'm going to take on this amount of carbs. And
Okay.
whatever that is for you. Some people weren't taking on a lot of fuel till they were 10K in. You know, I'm telling people to take on some fuel 20 minutes before the race starts. So they're topped up, the fuel
Mm.
tanks are full. So little tips and tricks like that, I suppose. If you want any more information, you're gonna have to pay me a fortune. But coming our marathon trip. But look, it wasn't changing the world kind of stuff, but it gave people a perspective and probably an idea or two of how to tackle nutrition for Barcelona.
Yeah, I remember hearing before, I think I mentioned again in the podcast about like having a gel before the race starts. And I'm like, why would you have a gel before? Sure, I haven't ran yet. I haven't burned anything. And then when you really think about it, especially when you do Dublin, you're probably eating food 2, 3 hours before the event. By the time you travel, getting in, the queues, trying to get to the starting line and all the rest, and you're a good 90 minutes without food. And then you want to go for all out effort for the next 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever it may be in a day. Why would you not have a gel right before the starting line to get that energy up, get the glycogen stores up before you get started? Because I always thought like, oh, glycogen stores, they deplete after 90 minutes, whatever it is. And I go 90 minutes from the start line when I start running. It's like, no, 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 no. That's probably started a good bit earlier if you haven't topped up your sources. You could be not eating an hour beforehand, and all of a sudden 30 minutes into the race or 45, like I feel bad already. Yeah, sure. I had big breakfast and I'm only doing 30 minutes of run. It's like, yeah, but when's the last time you truly ate to that point?
Yeah, and look, you have to factor in nervous excitement as well. You're going to be standing at that start line with sweaty armpits. Like you're in a crowd, there's a buzz, there's excitement, there's nerves. All of that is your heart rate's not going to be sitting at 60 when you're in the corral. You're thinking about it, you're warming up, you're stretching. So the idea really is you just want to fuel the jet as much as you can. You don't want to take off without as much fuel as you can on board. That's the basics of it. You will have burnt energy. If you can take it on, you need to give yourself that 20, 25 minutes for what you've just had to take effect. So if you're taking it before you get to that start line, and as you're crossing that start line, the fuel tanks are full. It's a game of how much and what works for you nutrition wise, and then caffeine can aid performance, but it's very individual after that.
Well, going to Barcelona this time next month, there's definitely one way we're getting there by plane. So how else would you get to Europe? But our next guest on the podcast, he might have a different perspective considering he could just go there by bike as you do to France, to Germany, to the Alps, to straight across to down Croatia, Greece, through Turkey. I got to learn a lot about the map by this episode of the podcast. Absolutely phenomenal stuff what you're about to hear in this journey we're about to take you on.
Yeah, this one is a great one, and it's I suppose podcast about endurance and running being our forte, but this is a challenge that I probably couldn't even dream. I couldn't even fathom what's going on, and cycling from Roscommon all the way to Sydney, Australia is probably one of the biggest ones we've come across, and we are delighted to introduce this episode this week.
Absolutely. I don't even know what more to add. I'm going to let his stories tell all the story in this one. So with that said, it is this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. Let's go. So our next guest on the Any Given Run Day podcast is, you know what? I don't even think I can do this intro justice, but we're going to go with it anyway. Our next guest on the Any Given Run Day podcast is currently 11 months into his epic 23,000 kilometer cycling journey from Roscommon to Sydney Opera House, from Rosie to Aussie, raising €50,000 so far for Northwest Stop Suicide Prevention and Mayo Roscommon Hospice. Fergal Guihen, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. How are you getting on?
How are you, Shawnee? Eric, I'm getting on all right now. I'm here sitting in Vietnam after just leaving China, and it's great to see some and talk to some Irish faces here.
I have two questions, Fergal. How's your arse, and did you cycle across the water?
Two questions I get asked a lot now. All right. The arse is it's all right. I think I was before I left home, I had a bit of a going away party, and there was a truck driver. He at the party, and he was just asking me, like, how are you going to manage to sit on your arse all day and go cycle like that? And I said, but do you do it? And no one asked about your arse. So.
I know we had a joke just before we come on. And two of the most common questions: did you cycle across the water, and how's your arse? So I had to just lead with them and just get them out of the way. But Fergal, there's a lot of us sitting here thinking, 23,000 kilometers. Yeah, okay, I can see that's X amount a day. How do you end up in Vietnam from Roscommon. Like Mizzen to Malin, I've done. People said was crazy. People have tried to do it in 48 hours, and we were like, "My God, that is not." What? How bad is Roscommon? Do you know what? Cycling across the world is better.
Uh, don't be slagging Roscommon too much now, but yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy idea, and I don't know where it started. Like, I guess growing up, I didn't really cycle that much at all. I would have been primarily GAA based. I would have, enjoyed going out for a run and everything. And then I wouldn't have really been a part of athletics club or anything as well. So yeah, I guess I got on to when I was in college. I'm a nurse, and COVID hit, and I was working in the intensive care unit as a healthcare assistant. So I was seeing very, sick people, terminal ill people passing away on a regular business on a regular day. And, as a 21, 22-year-old, it kind of hit home, I was kind of thinking, what do I really want to do in my life? This was kind of really eye-opening. And at the same time, COVID hit and I got really into endurance running. So I was actually running 100 kilometers weeks. My GA club had this one thing where, we were put in teams and they said, go off there and run. And for every kilometer, it's 1 point. So it's not really the smartest thing for a GA team to do. You should be sprint work, but I'm a junior team in the North of Roscommon. It's, we thought, sure, old school, just go out and run. And I got really into it. And through that, I realized I loved endurance sports. So, yeah, that stayed with me. I started thinking, I jumped over a marathon and I straight away started thinking ultra running. And nothing really happened. I told my friends, yeah, I'm going to do an ultra marathon and telling them. And this went on for maybe 2 years or so. And nothing. No sign of me signing up for an ultra marathon. And I think I moved back up to Dublin after a little stint back home in Roscommon. And, when I was back home, I was going down to Knockner and Sligo and I was running up it, run down and jumping in. So like I was doing this on a regular basis. It was, my fitness was up there, but I signed up for the marathon. I moved to the ultra marathon. I moved back to Dublin and then sure went out drinking with my friends most weekends, forgot about the running. And it was a massive blow to my confidence. I was here thinking I can, run an ultra marathon. I haven't even ran a marathon, official one at this stage. And, it was a massive blow. So then another year rolls around and I started telling myself, right, I can run a marathon right now if I wanted to. And I was just telling myself this, and last minute I decided to sign up for the Waterford Viking Marathon on a week's notice. So few runs during the week, whatever. I would have been fit with GAA. I was 24 at the time, and I'm 26 now. I was 24 at the time. I went for the marathon and sure I ran it. Got 4 hours. I want to say 4 hours 15 because I was running with the pacers. But for the last maybe I don't know 5 kilometers, I might have a bit of
Drop
fell
back.
behind.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah, I fell behind. So I say it was more a 4 hour 20 or 21. And I was delighted. Look, I finished the marathon after telling myself for so long I could do it. A real boost for my confidence. Training as well. Unfortunately, 5 days later, I was up in Dublin finishing my job and I was out drinking with my colleagues. I then went out drinking with my friends and I decided to cycle home. And on my cycle home, I tore my cruciate, which
Oh
was,
no.
yeah, it was a big blow. Sorry, bear at this mind. At this time, I was already telling people about this cycle. I was telling people, I'm as a nurse, I was going to move into Australia because all the nurses are, but I wanted to do something different. I wanted to, cycle there. And yeah, I tore my cruciate and I was thinking, this is the end of the world. I'm after telling all my friends I'm cycling. And fair enough, you tear your cruciate, but at the same time, you have an out. And I didn't really want to give into it. This was make or break. So I've just finished my job that day and I was moving back home to save up, but I couldn't even work at this stage. So I was out of work. And at that stage, I had two options. I could either just forget about the cycle or continue on trying to train and get back for it. And that's what I did. I said, this is make or break. And it's almost like a butterfly effect, all the things I just said there. But it comes to this was the biggest butterfly effect, whereas like I can make or break, and actually tearing my cruciate to me probably fully committing to it, because that was what I had to go, right. Well, I'm for right now. I had to go, right. I have to buy sleeping equipment because, I have to get panniers for my bag. I have to buy a sleeping bag, a sleeping mattress. If I start spending money on these things, it's more reason for me that I will do it. And I started telling more people. I told everyone. I remember telling one lad of my GA team, and he actually just got up and walked away from me. He thought I was crazy. And this was my way of, I'm not backing out of this. So I ended up getting the ACL reconstructive surgery in the last day of August 24. And then I left 6 months later, March 10th, 24. Sorry, this
And 23 was when you finished your surgery. So with
6 months,
you had 6 months to recover from surgery, knowing I'm going to cycle from Roscommon to Australia. How, like we've done races and we've had people train for Ironman, and me and Sean have showed up to races with no training, and we feel the pressure of having not trained, or, that constant, I need to get fitter kind of feeling. How do you go from surgery to cycling around the world in 6 months? How, were you under pressure with it? How did you feel about it?
I had a lot of time to think about it too, because when I was recovering, I couldn't work or anything. So I had committed. I said I was going to do it, and it was the most daunting thing ever. I remember I'd wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares, thinking I'm in the middle of whatever country, and my bike breaks. Like, I was having really vivid nightmares. And there was one person online I was following. He's from Denmark. He was cycling around the world from Denmark to Australia, Nicholas Bagsworth. And I remember having one dream where, I don't know, I was picturing him. He could have been in Afghanistan or rural China, and he just had like a worm coming out of his eye or something. And I remember just thinking, what's going on? My subconscious is obviously telling me, you shouldn't do this. This is wrong. But I don't know. I just kind of prevailed. I just kept tipping along. I then recovered. I think it was like around the end of October, beginning of November, I could start to go back working. So I started working as an agency nurse in Sligo General Hospital. And that was my way. I was working, honestly, 5-6 night shifts a week for several weeks to try and save up for this. And yeah, in the meantime, I had to get my body back in to baseline. Not even fit enough to cycle to Australia, but to baseline. So all I was doing was going to the gym, just doing whatever sort of. It's so hard thinking back. I honestly feels like 5 years ago, because I'm on the road 11 months, but it feels way longer than that. Just doing basic ACL reconstructive surgery exercises. And I remember it was maybe a week before I left, I went for a 45-kilometer cycle up around the Rigna Mountains where I live. It kind of goes up into Sligo, then into Leitrim, and back to my house. I'm very close to the borders. And I remember thinking, like, oh, how am I going to, how am I going to do this? I must have had this, I don't know, so ignorant. I guess a lot of the lads on my GA team would say I'm pig ignorant, where I just go and go and go. And I guess I was just ignorant with this. I think a lot of runners, ignorant, we choose a better word for ourselves, but I guess ignorant is a great word to describe it. And then the day I left, it was amazing. My whole community kind of got behind, and they kind of lined the road. Everyone from my village lined the road and me leaving, and there's a lot of tears. Then in the local town, Drumshanbo, Leitrim, all my friends, lots of family lined the roads there again, and I left through there. And yeah, I had to cycle up to Mullingar to my sister's house, 110 kilometers or something, and I managed it. Like, it's fine. It's endurance. You're not kidding yourself. You have the whole day to do it. And yeah, you're on a high, so that was grand. The next day I got to Dublin, and then the next day the ferry to France and on towards Paris. But I had to break it down because it's such a large trip. You can't just go, right, well, I'm leaving home to cycle from Roscommon all the way to Australia. I kind of had to go, well, I'm going from Roscommon to Dublin. Then I'm going from Dublin to Paris. And that's how I honestly had it in my head. If someone would mention to me now, what are you going to do in China? I would say, I'm not in China. All I have to do is get to Paris. And that's how I kind of broke it down for myself.
So for most people leaving home, they have that Shannon Airport, Dublin Airport, Emirates flight, Qatar flight, and it's all tears, hugs, and kisses. How weird was it to leave home but end up in Mullingar? How weird is that? You sat for 8 hours sweating with all your kit and equipment, and you're like, "Fuck, I'm only in Mullingar."
Okay.
How weird is that feeling to be like? Again, the cop out. I'm so close to home. Am I doing the right thing? You have a lot of time to think about it. A week before you've only cycled. I'm just trying to get the mentality of that first 2 days. How tough was that? Still being in Ireland, but knowing, I know it's only to Paris, but how weird was that? The tears, the goodbyes, the mammies crying. They're probably driving up to Mullingar to see you that night anyway, but they're still crying. How weird was that?
Yeah, I often say it's the hairiest part of this journey was cycling through Longford on the way to Mullingar, up through Longford town. I know Longford, great county, but yeah, yeah, you're just thinking it's such a, I would say it's such a daunting thing, but I had so much worked out in my head, like the route, I had such a general idea, and I had one thing I never mentioned previously was when I was planning it, it was like, well, I need to talk to people that have done it before. So the guy on YouTube had a UK to Australia video. Seen his email address, emailed him. There was an Irish guy, a few articles done on him. Forget his name, but he's from Limerick. Emailed him to go on a Zoom with him. And talked to maybe 4 or 5 people by Zoom call that have done it before. And they were all like, yeah, it's possible, it's doable, like nothing major that you need to know about something like this. So that gave me confidence. So when I was leaving, I was mad fearful about, anything they had instilled that confidence in me. But yeah, look, you're talking, you're at the gable of your house, you're sitting on your bike, you have your families, you have your cousins, my siblings, all around me. And yeah, tears just start coming. I wouldn't be a man to hide my emotions. I'm a nurse now, and the tears came pretty quickly. And then it came more when I was cycling down the road past all the people from my village. So it really was a surreal moment. But like you said, sure, Mammy was only waiting for me up in Mullingar at my sister's house.
I wouldn't expect anything less from an Irish mammy being like, right, goodbye. And then they'd be nearly on the ferry with you to France.
I wish.
So in terms of equipment, and I have to ask from a logistical point of view, because we've talked to people who've traversed Alaska, we've talked to people who've done 300 kilometers. We always ask about preparation and what you bring. And one of the questions, I know we're going to talk about some experiences later, but I just wanted to try and build a picture of equipment you have with you to survive on a daily basis.
Yeah. So, I guess I have pannier bags, which I know there might be some people that don't know, but they're
Saddlebag type things.
Yeah. They're bike bags. So either side of the rear wheel. And then I have 2 front pannier bags on the front and one on my handlebars. And you need a sleeping bag, a sleeping mattress. So I got both of them secondhand. I went fairly cheap with my. And bear in mind, my sleeping bag is only comfort level -5, and it's missing, I don't know how many feathers, don't know how many years old it is, and I'll get to it later. But I was sleeping in -22 degrees weather, so we'll come back to that. Then you're packing minimal, like I only have maybe like 3 t-shirts, 2 pairs of shorts, toiletries. Sure, you have my toothbrush cut in half. To make it like that's a good one though. I cut my toothbrush in half to bring it, so I only have the little brush on the end. But I brought 2 of them. Sometimes the sense, it doesn't make too much sense, but you're cutting yourself. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else I have. You have a spare chain, you have whatever spare bike parts you could bring. But in general, we kind of might overestimate how much stuff you actually need on a day-to-day basis. And this was eye-opening to me that how little you can live on. And that's really it. It's just the clothes. Then, a cooker as well. I have a gas stove. and I can have a pot and make whatever meal I want, no matter where I am. So that's how I survive most of the time. Tent and stove.
And before we get into the journey, I suppose to kind of set the scene as well, what was your kind of food plan? So as you set off, obviously Ireland, you're pretty safe, but then as soon as you get into France, it's a European country, but there's language. Like, what was the plan for nutrition for the day? How did you plan on cooking and stocking, and how much could you carry in a day? You know, was there a plan for that?
Yeah, well, like there was no major plan. Like obviously I had a gas stove with me and I'm on a budget. So working for them a few months, but like it's not really a budget that's going to give me 20 grand that I can splash on this amazing fun holiday to Australia. It was look, you're not trying to stay in hotels, you're trying to cook for yourself. But Europe was always going to be the expensive. So it's nutrition wise, you're eating so much on the bike. Um lots of baguettes all down through Europe. You're going into a little, you're taking pastries. It's mainly maybe pasta. My go-to was pasta chorizo because you don't need to cook it, and pesto. So I just cooked that most nights. Then for breakfast, I'd have probably porridge, or even now in China, we were cooking porridge half the time because it was better than eating noodles every single morning because they don't do breakfast out here. But nutrition, you couldn't really go too specific because you don't know what you're going to get. It's obviously changed with the cultures. So that was a major thing on this. I would have been big for the endurance aspect of this trip. I really wanted to push myself like I was when I was doing them 100-kilometer weeks when I was back during COVID. But and I knew it would happen. I soon realized, like, what's the point of me really rushing this? It's not about me pushing myself every day, but it's about, seeing the world and exploring it and getting to meet people from all over the world. And that was so evident as I did go down through Europe. I got learning about the Baltic Wars or the Balkan Wars, learning about the history of Greece, Turkey with Ataturk, and then onwards through even Georgia, Armenia, Iran, Afghanistan. There's no point of doing a trip like this and absolutely trying to kill yourself and be the fittest person in the world and prove to everyone. Like, I was never going to win that race anyways. But it might be my excuse here, but it's nice to pick the days. I might be in the middle of nowhere and I'll go, well, I'm going to do a 200-kilometer day right now. And then, you still have that, like, lucky you two runners, most people listening, runners or cyclists, you kind of have to have that inner voice inside you that it's like, you want to push yourself as hard as you can, and you have that voice saying no, go back and sit on the couch, whatever. For this trip, it was less so much trying to prove myself, oh, I can do this 100-kilometer every single day. It soon became about experiencing the cultures and really living life to the fullest. But then some days I do try and, all right, well, there's not much happening today. I'm going to do 150, 200 kilometers. And that's me satiating my ego.
It's all the training and stuff you've done for this, Fergal. I was going back through your Instagram. Day 10, you're 20 kilometers outside France. This is bananas to me. The very first time you had to change a tire was during this trek. Like, what happened there, and how much have you turned into an engineer with your bike since?
I have a nursing brain. I'm not like most bike packers out here. They're all nearly engineers. I remember thinking to myself, geez, I should probably learn about bikes before leaving. I should probably. But I had enough to worry about. I had to do the training. I had to convince my family that I wasn't going to die. There was too much to worry about that. I was like, all right, I'm going through Europe. I'll have Google. And I was a day outside Paris. And like you said there, I got a puncture. And I was like, what are these? The levers, tire levers. Didn't even know what they were called. And I had a video. I was trying to record doing it. But like, how could I? I had to, every time I go back to record myself, I'd had to go back to my phone and look at YouTube. So, but that shows, look, you can overthink trips like this. You might think you need to be the best bike mechanic. You might be the fittest person in the world. But really and truly, you don't. All you have to have is the ambition to go out and do something like it. And I did commit to it. And I'm not in Australia yet, But I'm happy that I'm becoming the person along the way who can cycle from Ireland to Australia, because I wasn't that person when I left.
Winter training? You need UltraPure Laboratories Wintergreen Heat Rub Cream.
Recommended by physios, trusted by athletes, and tried and tested by ourselves, this is an essential warming muscle rub for cold winter days.
UltraPure Wintergreen Heat Rub Cream is perfect for warming up muscles before exercise.
And ideal for soothing tired muscles, which, let's face it, marathon training, we could definitely do with that.
If you're concerned about the ingredients, it contains wintergreen oil, rosemary camphor oil, juniper berry oil, and antioxidant-rich caffeine powder. Sean has no idea what any of these means, but he knows that they work.
It keeps me warm too. Apply UltraPure Laboratories Wintergreen Heat Rub Cream liberally on problem areas such as the legs, arms, back, neck, and shoulders, and massage as well. Boy, rinse hands well with cool water after use. I have made that mistake. It is not fun.
Guaranteed Irish and made in County Mayo, UltraPure Wintergreen Heat Rub Cream is available in pharmacies and health stores nationwide. Shop the UltraPure Muscle Recovery range in-store or online and find out more at ultrapurelabs.ie. By listening to this advert, you are supporting Irish podcasts and Irish businesses. Let's get back to the podcast.
And it's great to help you. I saw one of the days, I have it somewhere in notes, where your bike was literally breaking down. You thought you'd make it to, was it Croatia or something? And you were pretty close. And it was just like, everything was going on the bike. And then you had people with you saying, hey, here's the nearest bike shop and stuff. Because like you said, you've only got those two duffel bags on front and back. It's not like you can put spare wheels and spare, gears and everything in there. Not that you knew how to change them. And look, hands up, I didn't know either. I remember the first time I changed a tire. Thankfully, I was in a house and I was there for a good half hour trying to figure out the tubes and stuff. You hadn't got that luxury, but it's been, I can't imagine how good it feels seeing just random people coming and helping you out through that journey, especially like knowing, like I wouldn't have a clue how long a bike would last, but obviously you now do.
No, definitely. Like you just pointed out one time there that you could have said any country, and I would have said, yeah, someone was coming to help me with a bike troubles. Yeah. Oh, look, I knew nothing about bikes, and you'd be going into a bike shop in every country trying to, for them to help you. But that's it. Like anything could go. But at the end of the day, there's always a easy solution to get you to the next spot. That was another question before I left. So I'm actually doing this for two charities, and we had a big fundraising night before I left. And one question, a lot of people ask me, like, what if you're in the middle of nowhere? And that's a big fear. I say that was a part of some of the nightmares I was having before I left. But there's always a quick, easy solution at the moment. My chain broke twice there in the last 3 weeks. And all you do is take off a link and put on a new link. Now, fair enough, I didn't know how to do that, but I'm actually cycling. But I'm cycling with a Wexford man here, Finn, who's an Advent listener of you. He cycled through all of China with me, and he actually mentioned something about your 5K time. I don't know what that's
For the
about.
love of. I thought biking episode, I wouldn't have to mention my 5K still not getting sub 20 after 5 years doing a podcast. But okay,
I don't know what's more impressive, that lads cycling across the world listen to the podcast, or the fact that they still abuse Sean about not being able to run under 20 minutes. This is Fergal and Finn. You've made my day. You've made my year.
We're happy to, but no, myself and Finn here have been cycling through China together. And one thing before I get into that, it's that before I left, I had all these fears, but there's one thing I kept telling myself, and it was the road will provide. And that may sound very, I don't know, very away with the fairies, but I don't think if I didn't have that mindset before leaving, I'd have got this far. Anytime something went wrong, there was always something there that would help you out. And I think just having the confidence to go for something like this is enough. The road will provide and help you along the way. And so many times it has. Like, I remember one time me and Finn here were cycling the Taklamakan Desert in China. And, you're talking 2,000 kilometer long, barely seeing anything. and we'd have to carry a rake of food, a rake of water with us, even weighing down our bikes more. Massive days of huge headwinds. And one day we're in the area of the desert that's literally called no man's land, because no one enters this one area. And we were very low on food. We had 200 kilometers to get to the next town. The other town was 300 kilometers back away. So really basically in the middle of nowhere. And we're sitting there with my gas stove, hiding from the wind, just underneath the road, trying to cook the last bit of couscous that we have. And bear in mind, I didn't even think we'd have enough food to make it. Well, we wouldn't have. But as we're sitting here in the middle of the desert, on the road above us, a guy on this mountain bike, like I mean, this little child mountain bike, right? This Chinese guy, and he just starts shouting Chinese at us. And me and Finn are looking at each other like, who is this guy? Where did he come out of? We're after cycling 300 kilometers, 200 kilometers. He came from behind us the way we came. And we were like, what's going on? And he was like, come with me. And we ended up just packing up my cooking equipment, and we followed him. We didn't know where he was bringing us. He brought us to an abandoned factory, maybe 2 kilometers up the road. And he opened up the door, and there was someone there. And we were like, should we go in or not? And we went in. He ended up cooking us a meal. Yeah.
No way.
It could have been anything. Yeah, it could have been, I don't know, a Sheen shop factory or something.
You were about to sell a kidney, Fergal, unbeknownst to yourself.
Yeah. And yeah, there was a guy there. They met us 2 baps with eggs. They gave us in this like silver tray. They put some sachets of chocolate milk and mixed it with water. And without these people, without this massive act of generous in the middle of nowhere, you couldn't even write it. Like crazy, this happening. We managed to get food and enough water to get us just about to the next town. Like we were cycling way into the night to make it to that town. We were starving. We resolved to mixing cold water, and I had like Nescafe, like a instant coffee. I was literally filling the water, shaking it that to keep us going. We were so hungry, and so yeah, so literally just running off. We were even hallucinating like the Finn like people on the side of the road. It was really a crazy time, and we got to the next town anyways, and it was maybe 3 or 4 a.m. and there was still a restaurant open, and we sat there, and like the 2 of you probably had this feeling several times. You're sitting there after doing one of the hardest runs, the hardest cycles you've ever done, and you just have that satisfied feeling. You're like, well, I done that, and this was the hardest day I done on my cycle, but I wouldn't have met it without that act of kindness.
And like we're talking about the length of Ireland, and probably some, in a straight line, that distance of nobody, like that's the scale we're talking about here. And to find someone with no probably language barrier, whatever, the trust to just go, come on, sure, there's 2 of us, there's 1 of him. What's the worst that can happen? But it is like amazing. And that fear of, I suppose, that survival instinct. And I know you say the road will provide, but also you kind of have to provide for yourself. When you've no other choice, you have to think. But how are you with drinking coffee now after that little experience?
I'm gone off the instant coffee, that's for sure. Yeah. But now I still carry a little bit with me just in case something like that happens again. Save me once.
As you cross through again, obviously China, there's some great stories. The cultural difference as you go from Europe into Greece, into Turkey, into the Baltic, all those kind of places you go, some are war-torn, some are considered no travel lists. As you look at a government website, they advise against travel. How did you feel as you crossed every border? Were the border guards looking at you going, where the fuck is this fella going? Were they just like, are you lost? Are you this? How did you find that cultural change, that you cross a line and it's just like, wow, the rules have changed?
Looking to recover faster, train harder, and perform better?
And then what?
Perform Nutrition is one of Ireland's leading sports nutrition brands with a number of great tasting protein powders, a range of vitamins, as well as other supplements such as creatine. All products are made in the GMP facility in the west of Ireland, and they have a range of batch tested and informed sports certified products. Perform is trusted by a number of Olympians, High Rocks champions such as Sean Noble, he was in the podcast.
Yeah, right, he was.
Also CrossFit Games athletes such as Emma McQuaid and many more. Perform's goal is to offer the highest quality, best tasting nutrition products for competitive prices. And now you can get an extra 25% off all products with the code AGR on their website, performnutrition.com.
25%. I'm typing it in now. And don't forget, we are supporting Irish companies. You are supporting this podcast by listening to this advert. So support Irish, get behind your podcast and get behind your local businesses. And until then, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, I would have been the type of person that if they were waiting in line for a queue to get into the US or whatever country, my heart would be racing. And I think a lot of people are similar to that. You know, you're just thinking, I'm doing nothing wrong, but I am. And that's the kind of that's
like the
feeling I
guard
had.
standing beside you in the chipper. Oh fuck!
Yeah.
What's he looking for?
You start thinking of everything.
Yeah. Does he know I said that about him?
Yeah, so I had them that kind of feeling for a lot of the border crossings. You know, the border crossings didn't really start until Turkey, but that was pretty easy. But you still would have that feeling. Same with Georgia and Armenia, and then Iran was the big one. And especially going that route, it was kind of, I never planned to go through Iran and Afghanistan. My route was always to get as far as Turkey, then Georgia, and go north of the Caspian Sea. I'm sorry, we don't have a map in front of us here, but north of the Caspian Sea through Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, which is like a safer route, but you're going through a long stretch of a desert, not as enjoyable. And as I went on, I met other cyclists going the other way who was passing, and they were pretty much saying they went through Iran, Afghanistan. They thought it was amazing. I think, you know, if you can go, go. And I thought, yeah, geez, these people went. My confidence grew as I got on, and I decided that I was going to go into Iran, even though it was, you know, kind of at war with Israel at the time. So to say when I was there, Iran is definitely my favorite country of the entire trip. But to say that I was not scared of my life the whole time I was there was an understatement. Like the nicest people I've ever met in my life, Iranians. And I think anyone that has been there would say the same, and anyone that's heard anything about there would definitely agree. Like we might hear something different in the media. I'll not get into all that, but as I know from my own experience, you couldn't go a day without getting invited into a house, without getting a free meal. Incredible. And I think I should nearly tell the story here of I had one bad experience. In Iran. I was getting very trusting with the people there, and just get invited into every house. So one time I was cycling, it was I think 35, 40 degrees, and I was getting near 1 o'clock, and I was looking for some shade. So I seen one tree, and I was about to stop and hide under the tree for 2 hours, and this car pulls in right as I get to the tree. And it's this man who I just had an awful sense about. I would never have trusted him anywhere, but just for the fact I was tired, the tree was here, bit of shade. He got out of the car and he was like offering me food and drink, and he did offer me a drink, and I was like, okay, I'll take the drink. It was a little juice carton, but he actually injected something into the juice carton, and I was drugged. And straight away, as soon as I drank it, I knew something was wrong. I know my body fairly well, and I knew something was wrong. So I packed up all my stuff, got on the bike, and I cycled off. And I managed to find a place underneath the road I was cycling on to hide from the sun. But I have an Insta360 camera, and I even like falling over. I had no motor skills. It was incredibly scary. This foreign country, you're drugged, you don't know what's going on. The man actually comes back and he finds me, and he's fighting me and wrestling me, and he's looking at my wallet and some of the stuff off my bike, and he ends up getting my wallet. But in the meantime, as we were fighting, I got really injured my foot, and I got up to the road eventually after he left, and I car stop brought me to hospital, and I ended up having 7 stitches to get in my foot. Now, bear in mind, I'm an Irish citizen or a foreign citizen in Iran, uh, and I'm in hospital. And I think the first thing that would happen with any sort of foreigner like this, especially in Iran, is, oh, well, he must be a spy. So I got drug attacked, hospitalized, and queried as a spy for the next week in Iran, which was not the ideal situation. I drew a lot of attention to myself, and I became a little bit of a celebrity in the local area because there's no GDPR. The doctor actually put everything up on Instagram. pictures of me drugged on the hospital bed. And I remember being in a coffee shop in the town I was in, and there was two girls laughing. And the guy I was with asked them what are they laughing at, and he realized that they said that they recognized the doctor's Instagram story, and they asked for a photo. So yeah.
Pretty scary ordeal. And I suppose it's like anything, isn't it? It's one experience that can paint a bad picture, but over how many kilometers, and generosity and niceness, but you can eat that anywhere. And who's looking to do harm, looking to do something bad anywhere. But I suppose it's just unfortunate for you, having had such a good experience in a different culture, that you're always kind of on edge, because we're brought up knowing one thing, and then you get there and it's like, why are they inviting me into their house? They love me, like it's such a bizarre experience.
Yeah, no, massively. And then same with Afghanistan. You hear something else on the news with Afghanistan that you go there and no matter what, the Taliban will kill you. But I don't want to speak highly or good of the Taliban, because I don't agree with their laws, especially with women. But my God, was I treated well in Afghanistan? We'd be cycling for hours and you go for 5 Taliban checkpoints every single day. But they're asking, have you water? They're quite pleasant with you. And everywhere I've been met with massive, massive acts of kindness. And Muslim countries really escalate. That escalates tenfold. And in the media, we're definitely told something else.
Fergal, during all this, like hearing, I know if I was like, hey, Dad, let's cycle up to a checkpoint to the Taliban. He's watching the media, and I would think, okay, something's gonna happen here. And like, just doing my research in this episode, like your mom was on a podcast or a radio station up in Northwest and all the rest. At this stage or at any stage during this trip, is there any family member or something going, hey, Fergal, you got close there. I think it's time to pull the plug on this. You've done great. You've raised X amount of money. It's time to come home or get the flight to Australia and say, look, you dodged a bullet here. Did you have any? You must have had some sort of interactions at some stage at this point, or was everyone like, "Hey, keep on going, you're doing great"?
Yeah, it was a mix, I guess. Like before I left, I was saying, my family were obviously, I had to try and convince them. And one time, I was recording a promo video for this cycle, because I'm doing it for 2 charities. And my dad was watching me out in the back garden, set up a tent for the first time, because I'm not massive in camping or anything like that. First time ever setting up a tent. And I ended up breaking the tent, and it was borrowed, and I had to buy a new tent for the people I borrowed it off. As I was getting recorded, my dad was out the back watching me, and he had honestly tears going down his face. He like, how are you going to do this every single day for the next year plus? And like, he just couldn't imagine me doing it. And I think about a few days later, I brought my mom and my dad down to the local lake, Loch Allen. They're jumping into it often, and they think I'm crazy for doing it. But I brought them down, jumped into the lake, and I got out, and I was just telling them like, how, like, do you think this is possible? And my dad would be like, no, I'd never jump in the lake. And I was like, well, like, do you think me cycling to Australia is possible? And he'd be like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's possible. And I said, well, it's not possible if you're going to be negative about it. Like, you have to be positive about it. And it's hard enough for me. I'm having these nightmares. I'm having a hard time. I need you to, if you do have negative feelings about this, to be positive towards it. Like, don't even say it towards me. And my parents really took it on board. And from then on, they were really supportive. They weren't like, why are you doing this? They were like, more like, okay, you are doing this. So with that aside, like you're saying, when I got to Iran, when something like that happened, you kind of question a lot of stuff. The confidence was very low. I was, in hospital, drugged, attacked in a foreign country. I had Afghanistan looming ahead of me. I went through massive bike difficulty the weeks beforehand. You had all the reasons to quit if you wanted to. It never did come. The actual to decide to quit, like, I never even thought about it. It was always just to keep going. And I don't know, maybe that's a self-defense mechanism too, because like, it's almost easier to keep going. You're so far into it, it's like, well, what's the point of me going back now? I may as well keep going. And I had to forget about, you had to forget about whatever, like you just had to think, what's next? And all I had was Afghanistan in front of me, and that's just got on my bike and kept going.
As you move through, and obviously you've come on the other side of that, when you cross the borders out of it, how do you draw the line from a country? And I suppose one thing, like you've done so much, like I'm struggling to remember things I did on holidays 6 years ago, and I was only there for 2 weeks, and it was probably the highlight of my year that year. Like, how do you kind of draw a line from a country and say, wow, that was amazing, that was cool, but now we're from this to China, and the rules I knew are so different. How long does it take you to adapt, and how do you, I suppose, how do you transition just one day at a time, obviously, and then how do you kind of mark time with that country and go, wow, that was amazing for me, and that's what I think of that, and these are the experiences I had. How do you keep track of it all?
Well, it's never been more apparent as right now. Yesterday, I left China after 4 months in the country and entered Vietnam. And I got so used to paying with my phone for everything you pay with this one app in China. I got so used to the way the hotels work. There was an app to look up the hotels you could get. You got so used to how that country operates. And coming across into Vietnam, it's like everything's cash. And straight away we
Yeah.
arrived to our hotel last night and we're like, what cash? The two of us, like, we couldn't believe. We were like, what do you mean cash? Uh, and then even right now, I almost missed this this interview because instead of time as I've been going further east, instead of time going, back an hour, I actually went
Oh,
forward an
God.
hour somehow because
Yeah.
China is actually 1 hour ahead for the last 4 months. I might have been way like kilometers, hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers back further west, but I was like whatever 8 hours ahead of Ireland. But now all of a sudden, even though I'm further east, I'm now 7 hours
7 hours.
ahead of Ireland.
Yeah.
So I was close to missing this interview. But sorry to answer your question there. How do I like just unload one country? Look, it's difficult. So many countries they're all so different. Even parts of different countries, like China had several provinces, and it's the most recent, so it's the one I find easy. It's so difficult. It's like so much things are different in different countries as you move on. But that's why I'm grateful that I'm journaling and I'm writing down all the experiences that happened because I left 11 months ago, but it actually feels like 10 years. Honestly, it's the longest time in my life since I left home. So, yeah, I think so much experiences along the way that it's important to write them down and remember them so I can, I don't know, maybe
Write
tell
a
them
book.
somewhere here. But I'll not say that now.
Fergal, when we look at endurance, we only had conversations in the last couple of weeks with guests where we talk about over 7 kilometers. That's it. The brain switches off. You move into that enjoyable period where you solve all your problems from the day. And then you're home. Burn. You can be more calm about your approach to things. Obviously, some of the charities you're working at, one, we talk about mental health. You say the last 11 months have been probably the longest. How have you managed the solitary time on the bike? I suppose I know you're meeting people on a daily basis, but there's a lot of thinking time. As a young mid-20s male who was in that bracket of a lot of thinking time where we're figuring things out, how have you managed that solitary time? How have you come out? You're still only on the way, but look, 11 months in, you've figured it out now at this stage. How are you on the other side of that now, coming to Vietnam? And what do you think kind of difference it's made for you when dealing with things? Or are you numb to that length of time of just you and your brain?
Yeah, for me, what keeps me going is exercise. And if I'm not exercising, that's when maybe, your mental health might struggle. And look, I think everyone has had moments where they struggle with their mental health to different degrees.
To get the release, like for
Yeah.
me, exercise is that because I do get that pent up energy disappears, the anger or whatever it was I was hoarding disappears, and I'm active, and the endorphin and the natural hormones kick in. For me, I'm the exact same. I get it,
Mhm.
and I'm a different person. If I haven't trained for a couple of weeks, I'm a different person to when I'm actually training every day.
And exactly what I'm doing right now is like I knew I could do this because for me, exercising is one of the most important things, and I always feel the best after it. And what am I doing each day? I'm exercising, I'm on the bike, I'm outside in the sun. It might be an awful day, but I'm doing something that makes my body better, that makes me better, and that does help with the mental health aspect of it. And unfortunately, when I was in Tajikistan after I left Afghanistan, I had to fly home for my cousin's funeral. He unfortunately committed suicide, and that kind of highlighted the fact how much how important it is to have a charity like the one I am raising funds for, Northwest Stop Suicide Prevention. Yeah.
How was that, if you don't mind diving into it? Because obviously you're doing this for that, people close to you know you're off, you're doing this for this kind of thing. When you've survived so much, you've come through an attack, you're in Tajikistan to find out yet another young male is involved in something like this, and you're leaving that journey to be brought back into that. And what so many of us are doing, and it's getting better at acknowledging, and the media is getting better at acknowledging that it is a big issue. How did you manage that issue? And then, more importantly, if you don't mind, or maybe we don't have to talk about it, when you get back on that bike, how are the next few weeks after that thinking about that? Because let's call a spade a spade. I know for me, that's all I'm going to think about for probably the next month or two.
Yeah, it was difficult. It's something you'd never expect, and definitely on this trip, it was something I never planned for. So I was lucky. I was in a country that I could fly home from. So I just left Afghanistan maybe a week beforehand, and I was in a city. So I was fortunate in that aspect. But it was tough coming home. It was nice to be with my family and my cousins during this period. But during the same time, my head was always still on the bike. I wasn't really home, but it was nice to spend some time with my family. And when I did fly back, what I had in front of me was China. So I went from one, awful thing to another awful thing, because the part of China I was going into was the Taklamakan Desert. And in this region, you have police following you all throughout, for various reasons. A Google search will tell you why. Um, but yeah, it was very daunting. And I guess to get through it, doing what I'm doing for the charity that I'm raising funds for was a major help. It was leaving Ireland having two more reasons to do this, not just for me to make it to Australia, not just for my ego, not just for my family, actually having another external reason to do it, which is raising funds for two important charities, was enough to keep me going on that bike and to get back out there. It wasn't a matter of quitting. And that might have been another reason why I didn't really think about quitting after I got attacked in Iran. And the other charity I am raising funds for is Meo Roscommon Hospice Foundation. And since I am a nurse, I really know how important hospice foundations are. Some people might not have heard that much about them, but I'd imagine a lot of people have had family members that had support from a hospice. And my great granny did. He benefited so much from when I did say I was trip, my still alive, and she that you should do it because they were for them, because they were so vital in the we had during my great passing away. So I couldn't be happier for the two charities I am for, and also that they're two local charities. It's that I'm also giving back to my local area, because I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for them. If it wasn't for my GA team, it wasn't for the local communities, the towns around where I am all coming together for the launch night. I think I owe a lot to that, and I would not be here if it wasn't for them. So yeah, I guess that's how I got back on the bike after something so hard happening, like having to come home for my cousin's passing. But yeah, I'm happy to be out here and completed China at this stage and have Southeast Asia ahead of me. But China, the hardest leg of this entire journey.
Was it hard? Well, obviously, again, to kind of finalize that point, it's good that as well, and hopefully we can raise awareness. And again, you're doing it for charity, and people hopefully listening to this will know that it is okay not to be okay. It is okay to talk, and there are outlets there, like you say, in a great charity that you're working for. To move on from that, then again, you're talking about the hardest journey in China. Was it the different elements like the desert, the vast time and country, the police? What made this the hardest segment?
I knew it was going to be the hardest before leaving home, because the Taklamakan Desert is a region that may have a lot of ethnic minorities. And for the last few years, they've been watched very closely, to put one way, by the government. So we knew we were going to be followed by police all the time, and we had to try and, hide from them. They'd be following us in unmarked cars, and we'd try and camp, and they don't want us camping in case we see something we shouldn't. So a few nights we actually did hide from the police. We managed right at dawn or at dusk, and they had drones in the air looking for us one time, and another time they sent the locals off to try and find us. And the reason they gave was because there's bears and wolves in this region. But I mean, there wasn't. And later on, after that, this is also with the desert climate. It wasn't majorly hot, but the nights got very, very cold. Yeah, extremely. So that was difficult because it was the first level of that. It was actually really cold on my journey. And then later on in China, maybe like a month and a half going through the desert, later on, we went up onto the Tibetan plateau. So we didn't enter the area we know as Tibet. We entered right beside it on the plateau, but people count themselves as Tibetan, and it's 4,000 meters elevation above sea level. So we we were camping in minus 22 degrees. I mentioned it earlier, and that was disgusting. And we would have been cycling in, I think the worst we were cycling in was minus 16 degrees. So I don't exactly have really expensive equipment that's going to keep me warm through this. So yeah, experiences like that, I'm very grateful I've made it through. And I'm proud of myself for making it. And I'm very lucky to have Finn from Wexford with me, because I think I could have thrown in the towel during parts of that if it wasn't for him.
So you said earlier that you had a sleeping bag that was registered or rated for -8. Finn probably won't admit it, but did you ever share a sleeping bag, just for the extra heat, Fergal? What was going on in China?
we met more
movie, Fergal.
we met some cyclists who made that joke a few times, and do you know what? It would have been warmer if we did get in the same tent some nights, but no, we didn't, to answer your question. But to say if I was to do it again, I probably would try and get in the same tent as them. It was that cold.
Fergal, that's exactly what someone who shared a tent would say on a podcast. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Cut that part out.
So to pick it up from that, you are in Vietnam now. I was there at Christmas. Again, cash only, but it is a great country, and obviously, again, a kindness as you move through Southeast Asia. That's going to be a different experience for you, and a different culture again as you move on through. What is kind of the plan now from vast, or it's a huge plan still? There's still a lot. You still have to cycle across all that water. So what is the plan from now for the next couple of months that are going to bring you towards Sydney?
Before I cycle across the water, I'll have to invent a boat or something. But I haven't really got my route fully nailed down, but I have, posted online that I'm going cycling through Southeast Asia and down towards Australia. And you can't believe the Irish community that's out here. I've had over 50 plus people Irish people living in Southeast Asia that have messaged me saying, like, you have a bed in their house. There's a point for me in, Paddy's Irish Bar in Malaysia. Like the amount of Irish people everywhere is incredible. So thankfully I have, more than enough people to meet. And I think the country-wise, I'm going to cycle, I'm going to do the Hanjai Loop. That's where I'm heading straight for now. So that's like massive ups and downs. I think it's like 12% gradient for like minimum almost for the majority of the whole thing. So that's going to be very difficult. And then straight to Hanoi. And after that, it's maybe down along the Vietnamese coast into Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and yeah. But like I said, I only plan from Dublin to Paris. So I'm only planning right now from where I am in Vietnam to the Hanjai Loop. So I'm not even thinking about the rest of Vietnam yet.
And is that kind of the luxury in terms of, look, people say listen to the body and take it as it comes. There is no definitive timeline. You're okay, financially, there may be a timeline or a budget that you're kind of like, okay, right, we need to kind of kick on with things here. But is it kind of reassuring in the fact that it's like, look, I'm a bit tired today, maybe only 50K, I'm going to take a day off. Like today you took a day to rest, recover. It's a new country, settle and talk to us in your time off. But is that kind of a luxury as well that you can just take it day by day, and each night it's like, well, what does tomorrow have in store, and let's just get on with it. And cooking have a big difference. We say the price of food and stuff should be. Could that take some of the pressure off? Because I know from being there, you can get meals for €2, €3. It's a lot easier, I suppose, in this section. In Southeast Asia, population densities are a bit closer. So is that easier now again, I suppose, for one day at a time?
Yeah, definitely. Like China was very cheap, surprisingly, and then in Vietnam already you can see how cheap it is. But it is great that we can cook our own stuff. Having a camping stove has been vital, because you go so long without places to like restaurants. So yeah, it has it's saving money has been the one high priority on this trip, and having a tent and a camping stove has been clutch.
So I have to ask, how often is it when you get to a shower? Like,
Did you have to ask, Eric? Did you have to ask?
I do have to ask. Like, how are you managing? Because obviously you're carrying everything. Do you have to embrace being a little bit scruffy?
Yeah, I think my upbringing armor in Roscommon has really helped that. Like, even though I'm a nerd, if my hands get a bit dirty now, all right.
But I ask it as a joke. Is there a way? Because I know from people who have backpacked, it's still the same kind of, although less exercise in between. It's still, you just embrace the kind of, you're a little bit scruffy, but every so often, is there a nicer hostel, or is there kind of a routine you follow to say, do you know what, tonight's a night for a good night's sleep and a proper bed and a shower, and let's regroup and go again? For example, today, your rest day. Is there any kind of rhyme or reason to that, or does it just fall with whatever way the track brings it?
No, there's always is. You're planning your route, what city or what towns you're heading to. So maybe you might leave one city and you have 6 days to make it to the next city or town that you want to take a break in. But that could end up being 7 or 8. That could end up being 5 days. So it really depends. Like your clothes, you're not really getting to wash it until you do get to a city. So I've went. I don't even want to give a number. Like, I went a long time without showering, a long time without washing my clothes. Uh, it's a lifestyle that's not for everyone. But then again, it shows, maybe you don't really need a lot of them luxuries. Now, it is nice to be clean. In the Muslim countries, or you'd have at every mosque there'd be, a tap or
The
something, so
foot
you would be
washing,
able
the
to
tap.
wash
Yeah, yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
massively in Iran and Afghanistan, you're seeing through sandstorms. Like in Afghanistan, my very first day there, massive sandstorm. Like, I'm getting hit full on with sand, and at the end of the day, you're destroyed. And this is day after day, you're kind of sand everywhere. And wash your face, maybe with wipes or whatever, clean whatever you can if you can't get near a water source. And just keep going until the next city or town, regroup and go at it again.
The elements you have been through. Like, I was going to bring up this, the sandstorms. One time you were camping out by a ferry at thunder and lightning. You've been up the Alps and snow. You said minus 22 degrees. Like, if I'm going out for a cycle, I make sure I have the rain jacket with me, probably 2 types of hats, the gloves. If I go anywhere with the gloves, I'm in trouble. Like, carrying all that gear, and just, you must be disposing some stuff here and there along the way.
Yeah, I am. Like, when I left Ireland, I was going to have a bit of bad weather in France and then Germany. But after that, sure, it was all sun once I crossed the Alps down along the Adriatic coast. And I was like, what am I doing with this rain jacket? Or what am I doing with the such and such gloves and everything? So, yeah, you can get caught out fairly badly. Thankfully, I've kept the rain jacket and the waterproof pants, because there's been times where the heavens open. It might be 30 degrees, clear sky, and an hour later, I think it's because I'm cycling so fast. I'm just the weather's changing. But yeah, exactly. You kind of have to prepare, bring what you can, but then also bring as limited amount of stuff as you can. So look, it's hard to get it right, but at the end of the day, you get a bit wet. You get a bit wet. You get a bit wet. At the end of the day.
Speaking of gear, I heard you talk about this in the podcast. You're going 60 kilometers an hour at one stage, and yeah, you had a slight problem with your brakes.
Oh, stop. Yeah. I forgot to mention this. Yeah, I was crossing the Alps. It was really early on. Like I say, I only learned how to change a tire like a week before this. And I was going up over the Alps in Austria, and I was coming down the other side. And look, I didn't even know you have to change brake pads. You know, I barely even knew what brake pads on a bike were.
I'm with
I'm
you.
coming down. Likewise, Johnny. I'm coming down this massive descent. Like after, I think it took me 3-4 hours to get up this mountain, and coming down the other side, and like I'm recording. I'm awful for recording. I've the phone out here and I'm trying to record myself coming down the descent. Look at me, I'm an amazing man. And you can even see I like kind of lean over and trying to brake and I can't. And I'm a few curse words, and I ended up having to stick the foot out to brake, and it took almost a minute for me to come to a stop. But if there was any car coming, I would have been destroyed. Thankfully, I managed to stop, and I had a video then, people can look at it. But yeah, it was a hairy situation, and I wish that was the hairiest I was in, but there was a few more worse ones.
It's one of those where this is why when I started the intro for the podcast, it's one thing saying 23,000 kilometers and all the rest, but just trying, like, we haven't even scratched the surface with the amount of stuff you've done in the last 11 months. It's so hard to comprehend what you're doing and everything you're doing for charities involved. I don't have a question. It's just fucking phenomenal what you are doing right now. It is bananas. And I'm watching your stuff on Instagram this morning. I got that travel bug back for the first time in a long time. Like, I'd love to visit here. You're talking about the former Yugoslavia. I'm like, oh, this is so cool and stuff. And just what you're doing is absolutely incredible, mate.
Thanks, Shawnee. And, it means a lot. Like, I have had a few messages of people saying how much, I might have inspired them. And it would have been something I would have loved before leaving, to know that I would inspire someone. And actually hearing that I am means a lot. And it's also another thing that for people that are struggling with mental health or whatever, the world is huge. If you're stuck in whatever circle and it's quite difficult, you're struggling for whatever reasons, like a change your environment or just going out and exercising or just doing something different. And I think afraid to change, to do something different. And if anything, I hope my journey can look everywhere in the world is the same. Humanity triumphs no matter where you are. Kindness always triumphs, and I enjoy sharing them moments where kindness prevails. And I hope that people can see that and maybe change their own environments or do to better themselves. And yeah, at the end of the day, I am raising funds for a suicide prevention charity, and that's what we want to do: prevent suicide and just for people to enjoy life more, because we're only on this planet for a short period of time, and I'm couldn't be happier myself to have had the motivation and just to go for something like this. And I just hope someone else listening could go for that one thing that this trip is to me, that they'll get up and, I don't know, train for that marathon or that Ironman, or maybe go for that promotion or something, because you only have one chance at this. Go full tilt.
It's like life is rehearsal. It is the live action, and the worst thing people can say is no, and the worst you can do is fail. But for me, it's attempts, and if you lose one day, it's attempt number one, attempt number two, and unfortunately, and hopefully that message keeps getting across to people. And as you said, like I've traveled a bit over the last year, and the world is huge, and there is so many good people out there, and so many different circles you can put yourself in, and different cultures, and just make a change, I suppose. And to come from the GAA background, Roscommon, all the way through all those different cultures in the space of 11 months is huge. And in terms of development, growth, and understanding other cultures and other people and how they work is absolutely amazing. Fergal, we are very conscious that we are eating into a very valuable rest time for you. The story has been absolutely amazing. But we know we are definitely going to have to get you back to find out how Southeast Asia was and keep in touch with the rest of your journey.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for sharing not just my journey, but other people's journeys, and trying to motivate people along the way.
And look, we are so happy that highlight of your trip was listening to us coming through China. So, you know, we'll send you the logos. Don't worry about it. But Fergal, it's been absolutely amazing having you on. It's been brilliant listening to your stories. We wish you all the best. For anyone who is listening and wants to get involved in Fergal's story, we will have all his details attached in the show notes. There will also be links to his charities that he is helping sponsor as well. So, Fergal, from all of us back home, we're delighted to give you some well wishes and some Irish voices, and some Irish listeners will hopefully be tuning in to all the great stuff you're going to do over the next few months.
Thanks, lads. Thanks, Shawnee. Thanks, Eric.
And that's it for this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast from myself, Fergal, and Eric. Take care.
And don't forget about poor old Finn.
No, he wasn't. He brought the 5K time. Back, Finn. No, back in your box.
Good man, Finn.